All right, so discussion on archetypes, part three. I may have to delete discussion part two because I went too wild with it. I went too far with it. Uh, I w- my thinking was to broaden scope, and as is often the case with me, I followed the path of inspiration and passion rather than the ordered one where we can keep a hold of what we're talking about and what we're learning about such that we are not overwhelmed by subject to subject to subject. I myself tend to know enough about each of these subjects. I can eventually link it around to archetypes. And that really was my whole goal, was to show how important it is that we all learn about archetypes. That the most important discoverers, thinkers in humanity learn about how the archetypes are there, not only in tarot or in Carl Jung's philosophy of psychology, but also in everything, um, so that we can see that a structure exists. Using base archetypes, we can come up with our own, say, um, table of elements, but it can be the table of archetypes. We've only had, the unhinged work on tarot archetypes, and they did a pretty good job. They came up with some of the good stories, one of which I'm going to go over first because we're all going to see how that's an archetype, and it can provide the best demonstration of how the archetype shows up within the human mind, over and over and over and over and over as a story. But not only is it a story that authors write when they make stories, so that when you say an author has made something derivative of previous work, it's because, hey, there's nothing new under the sun. There are only these archetypes that repeat over and over. Okay, so why don't I start there? Um, and most people are going to think this is the most important archetype. Okay, and you know what? You can call it Jesus. You can call it the resurrection. Okay, you can call it the story of the gospel. Okay, so this is one archetype. The story of the gospel is an archetype. So it's a story being played out. And that story um, is played out in many other ways. And this one we can even follow into biology. Okay? We can probably follow it into other things, but I would like to show how important it is that when we find these archetypes, that we recognize the same thing on different levels of, I don't know if I want to say reality, but almost like different subjects. Are you talking about biology, or are you talking about, fiction? Or are we talking about religion here? Or are we talking about what actually happened with religion? Are we talking about philosophy here? Or are we talking about psychology? Okay, yeah, is the answer. Yes, we're talking about all those things when we talk about archetypes. That's what I want to show. And if we realize that, we can realize just how important it is that instead of the periodic table of the elements, we have the periodic table of archetypes. laid out for us so we can recognize them in our lives, see what we're playing out over and over again. And not only that, but we can look at one particular great archetype and we can apply it to, chemistry. Can apply it to engineering, even. Like, say you're okay, look, I'm going to start with the actual archetype itself, okay? Jesus Christ, okay? So, Jesus Christ, the ultimate, perfect being, our Savior, etc., etc., etc. Okay, in a low point, sweat and blood, betrayed by his followers. This is a story. Innocent, yet charged and convicted. Mocked, tortured, humiliated. And we're talking about ultimately something that is, okay, in Jesus' case, the ultimate being. But we find that when we look at this archetype in other scenarios, that ultimate being is inherent everywhere. Anyhow, before I get too far afield, let's keep looking at the archetype. So Jesus dies. 3 days. He's dead for 3 days. Okay? What happened to him exactly, we're not sure. But there is a waiting period. Okay? After the terrible has happened to the great being, okay, there's a waiting period. And suddenly there is transcendence, there is victory, there is ascendancy into heaven. Okay, there is a transformation, there is redemption, there is all that. Okay, there's everything is great, everything's wonderful. It's like the song in Aladdin. It's a whole new world. That's that's the idea you're supposed to get. Fortunately, as the Gospels read, they call it the good news, but especially in the book of Luke, it's certainly not laid out as good news. It literally ends before they changed it with those who saw the resurrection or were possibly saw the resurrection were stricken with fear, and that was the spirit of things, and they never told anybody. They never shared the good news, and this is gospel. So, and it definitely disagrees with the other books. Now I'm getting far afield again because there's so many important issues, so I'll stop doing that. I'm going to drop that. Let's continue looking at other examples of the same archetype, okay? The same base blueprint that is expressed by reality over and over again habitually. Okay? So in religion alone, we find this archetype expressed by their most important figures. Okay? And I know some people have heard this before and have found it to not be true or exaggerated, but I'm going to talk about the ones that absolutely are true, okay? So, that are the same story. And it's not because they're copying from previous stories, it's because it is a true archetype that embodies her reality. And that's why people write them over and over again in their stories, and I don't believe they mean to. Anyhow, let's go to Norse mythology, okay? So we find there Odin and the Hanged Man. And so we also see the Hanged Man is an archetype they accept in the tarot, which is great. This is one of the best, easiest to recognize archetypes there are. And I'm going to show you how it crosses the field into science, etc. Uh, so Odin hangs in a tree. So obviously there's a suffering, there's an aloneness, there's a betrayal, he's already, God. He's already, the greatest of the gods. But he finds himself hanging in a tree. Looks very similar to, a crucifixion. But either way, there is no movement. There is no change. There's stillness. And what occurs inside that stillness is always mysterious. Afterwards, much like the resurrection, he comes with good news, the runic language. He surpasses this time period where he waits in suffering, and then out of it comes this really great bit that absolutely helps everyone. And in Norse mythology, that's how the runic language was developed. That's how it was given to him, and so it gave us all this magic, and it gave us all this communication, and gave us a whole new world of potential. Okay, so there's one absolutely across the board. I don't believe anyone is like copying anyone else. About these religions, it is an intrinsic archetype. Okay, now let's look at how, and there are other religions where it's done too, but, and it's in my favorite movie, so let's cross over from religion to fiction and to authorship. Okay, so my favorite movie is Kung Fu Hustle. And it's a very deep movie. A lot of people don't realize because it's seen as a comedy, and it is absolutely hilarious. But I must try to stop being so charming and just teach here in a minute. Okay. So in the movie, the main character gets beaten up bad. He's not a perfect guy. But then there are clues to show that he's something special, and he's really suffering through a lot. And he gets beat to death basically. And being a comedy, they bandage him up, and he's just one big mummy bandage, and he can't move. And the bad guy's winning. It cuts back to our hero, who is really pathetic throughout the whole movie, actually. And you see his bandaged, mummied body, pulsating, and you don't see it happen. But instead they cut to a scene of a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis into a butterfly. And that's the same archetype, and we see it in biology. And it's such a mystery why it would be there in biology. But anyways, so of course our hero suddenly becomes the perfect being, all powerful, where he was pathetic before. There's these martial arts masters, and he's like taking cigarettes out of their mouth. You shouldn't smoke, taking care of everybody like he's there. And of course, he comes out and he's just the perfect badass ultimate being. It's a great movie. You should see it. Them cutting to the butterfly emergence, so perfect, beautiful. But we'll use that to segue into how we see this. How we see this. I'm really terrible. Um, I think everybody should enjoy alcohol like Jesus thought. You know, that's biblical. Uh, I don't think anybody should be drunk ever. So, but yeah, everybody should enjoy alcohol. Um, I have this sort of problem. Um, I don't know if it's because I've got the tetragrammaton on my fingers or not, but anyways, it's never been so bad. I'm like drip. Look at it. There's just like I peppered the can in holes talking about this. I don't know if it's because I'm excited or I've just got lots of pent up stuff. It's we really shouldn't be talking about myself, except I do this as a journal, but I wanted to switch focus more to actually yeah, uh, sharing the wisdom, because I actually do have a lot, even though nobody believes it. So